Welcome to our panel about the resilience of the global economy. First of all, we would like to start with some positive aspects. The financial markets started very optimistic. Are they too optimistic, or what are your outlook? What is your outlook for the economy in this year?
Well, obviously, sometimes the emotions of the economy and reality, there's a certain gap. We in logistics, we have the possibility to look 6 weeks ahead, so we do know what's on the shipping on the oceans. We do see a very slow start of the year. We see that export is really slowing down, import as well. And in particular, this is not a global phenomenon, it's a European phenomenon. We do see that in particular in Europe and in Germany, consumption is very low. We do see that there's a hesitation. Everybody knows the impact on energy prices, the impact that we have seen on the discussions coming from the Ukraine war. So we do see, at least in the first quarter, very modest and slow movements. If you look into what export is happening right now, in export you have still, in particular in machineries, some order backlog. So this is doing well, but everything around consumer consumption is very slow. So too early to say about the year, but the first quarter will be a slow start.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kupfer, you talk a lot with your clients, with German companies, with the so-called Mittelstand. What is your impression? What is the mood in the companies at the moment?
I think we can say that compared to a few months ago, early in the year, but also throughout the summer, it's much, much better. I mean, it's much more sentiment, positive sentiment. I mean, earlier this year, we were sitting, and all of us sitting in crisis committees and thinking about which companies could fail due to gas prices, energy prices. I think this has eased and smoothed. So the general sentiment is much, much more positive. Nonetheless, I see a couple of risks. I mean, we see that probably China is a big wild card at the moment, in particular with regard to COVID. But what has changed, I think, is that the scenario of a deep, deep recession, at least for the moment, is off. We were thinking about 5%, 6% earlier last year, but now I think we're not even sure there's going to be a technical recession this quarter or the next quarter. So I guess it's much better now, but too early to tell. There, I would agree. We don't have the clear picture on China and whether production slowdown due to COVID, due to absences, may again affect supply chains. But people, I think, have the feeling that they can deal with energy prices, they can deal with gas prices. They have been mostly able to pass on price increases. And I think many companies actually feel that they can weather this crisis at the moment.
Okay. Inflation is no problem anymore?
Sorry?
Inflation is no problem?
Well, I mean, inflation, you saw the numbers yesterday from the US, I think 6.5, it's getting better. For this year, I would expect something with a 6, but towards the end of the year, we would expect 3% or something, which is much, much better. Nonetheless, it's still high, and the flip side of that obviously is also interest rates. So there is a burden. I was talking to one of the CEOs here who was earlier on the stage who said, yeah, okay, financing costs are much higher, so that's something to deal with.
Yeah. It has consequences on the real estate business, for example?
Yeah, I think real estate is something where we still don't know where it's going to play out. So we don't know, so the equilibrium between supply, demand, the price level, the valuation level haven't been found. They will be found, I think, maybe later this year, but this is too early to tell. I mean, we had the large real estate fair here in autumn. There was still okay-ish mood. I think what we need to wait is once we found this equilibrium, then we see the market. But if you type in your most favorite real estate research in one of the portals, you're going to find probably many more offers than you found before.
It was my experience also. And can you tell us about the supply chains? Are they resilient now, or how is the situation?
Well, after 2 years of stress test, the banks had their own stress test, supply chain and logistics, they do have their own as well in the past 2 years. Actually, it started with the blockage of the Suez Channel, where we have actually learned, how vulnerable the all logistic rounds around the world are. Yes, they are, because like HHLA, we are a European logistic company operating 24 hours, 362 days. And in the past 2 years of the pandemic situation, we haven't had one moment of standstill. So this is a good news. Logistic is connecting. But resilience of logistic and supply chain means a very strong cooperation. Every single chain needs to be as strong as the one before and after. And that means cooperation, that means communication, and as well, obviously, to understand that in cases of single decisions of closing of frontiers, of ports, there will be immediate wave, happening, which then needs to be basically dismantled afterwards. So they are resilient, but we have to learn as well that we started, I think, in the 90s, to optimize efficiency by just-in-time and just-in-sequence, having no storage space and no buffers. And I think that's something that we have learned, that this is over. You need storage space, you need a certain resilience in your supply chain, as well as obviously a diversification of production sites.
And what about the risks in China with the COVID situation, and do the factories have to shut down? What do you think?
Well, we have heard different things. We know that, as we have experienced it here in Europe, that there are a labor shortage for a certain period, as the infection rate is still very high. 20 to 30% of labor is just missing. But we have experienced it in Europe as well, that this is a certain period that you need to overcome once it's getting again into a certain balance. And I think as well China has learned not to shut down, but to find a way on keeping on production.
Okay.
We haven't heard of one shutdown of ports so far, which is a very good news, even knowing that the infection rate is still very high.
Okay. And what is your impression from the German Mittelstand? How are their lessons in China?
I think, first of all, as the topic is resilience, one thing we observed and still are observing, that how resilient Mittelstand in general has reacted to this. I think the heroes of the last couple of months were the purchase departments, still making possible that tiny little pieces of something to be built were found somehow, and at whatever price. And so I think there has been shown a lot of resilience. The same on the energy side. So people were plugging in oil supplies into gas supplies, or any kind of very innovative ideas to still secure the gas. I think China, people are trying to diversify a little bit away from China. But the truth is that it's so interwoven that people cannot step out of China, first of all, because pieces, even for American products, are from there, and you cannot just switch it off. Secondly, I think the domestic market is just so big that if you were talking to a chemical company, you will not give up China. You cannot afford not to cover this market. So on the supply chain side, I think the biggest risk we're facing, and that's what people confirm to me at least from Mittelstand's company, is yet another disruption through the COVID crisis. So that we have shut down in companies, shut down in factories, delay in supply. I think this is the biggest risk at the moment.
But we cannot get independent from China. That's an illusion.
I think it is an illusion. I think all companies I'm talking to are looking into what's my dependency. Can I diversify my supply chain? Can I diversify also my markets? But China is big as a market. It is very interwoven. Then there's one argument coming, is there a battle in between the US and China? So you can only do business in one market. I guess it's not going to happen, simply because I think also Apple and other big US companies need supply from China. So I think we're going to see some differentiation, but not a radical shift or cut. I cannot believe that this is going to happen.
You have provoked very controversial discussions after negotiations with a Chinese partner, and you have, in an interview, you have said you feel like Hansi Flick. What has logistics common with football?
Well, about football, everybody has an opinion, even not being the best football trainer. And we have experienced it, unfortunately, in the past months, that everybody has an opinion about a harbor, but not a lot of people really do know how a harbor actually is functioning. And thank you for the question, because I think we need to understand HHLA is a globally working company. Our customers are the world. Not only China, but every single logistic production is basically connected to us. 240 billion euro of the German export balance is made in harbors, the majority in Germany. About 30% of the production coming in are coming from China. Therefore, we are basically the mirror of the production and of the dependency and connectivity that we are having on the global economy. So what has happened is, in our industry, as we have a surplus, there are more offers than actually needed from harbor terminals. We are fighting very much for customers, and it's a very legitimate approach as well to offer participations. That's what we have done, and to make it very clear, it's no offer to participate at the harbor of Hamburg. The harbor of Hamburg belongs to the city and the country of Hamburg 100% and stays there. It is a minority stake at an operating company, which are operating the loading and unloading, the dispatching of containers. In this company, there is no nugget hidden. So it's no critical infrastructure. There is no access to data. There is no access to technical information. There is no critical infrastructure hidden in this operating company. Therefore, the discussion was unfortunately misleading, and we only had the chance later, to clarify this.
And when will the negotiations come to an end?
Well, we got the end of October, the official approval of the government. We have renegotiated all the details, and we are now awaiting the final approval. So it's a formal process right now running, which we are very confident that this is going to happen very soon.
And if the harbor if that stake is not critical infrastructure, what is critical infrastructure?
Well, the operating company is not a critical infrastructure. Obviously, critical infrastructure, you do have IT communication, you have it harbors itself, the railways, the streets, you have as well critical infrastructure on the agricultural, on the health area. So definitely critical infrastructure needs to stay under the control of the relevant governments. In our case, this is the case. It was very obvious to see that, particular in the US, if you talk about the harbor of Los Angeles and Seattle, there Chinese people have even majority stakes, as they do have in the Netherlands and in other European countries, but not in Germany.
Okay. And what about critical infrastructure in the financial sector?
Yeah, I think if you talk about banks, I think they have become much more resilient, actually, and that is because of the crisis 2007 to 2006, 2007 to 2008. I think there's a lot of measures. We are probably the most regulated industry in the meantime. I think European banks have shored up something like 500 billion in capital through this period, 2007 and beyond. We have stress tests all over the place. We have a regulated compensation. So I would say, if you look at the capital ratios of banks and also at the very low default rates banks are having and have been having the last couple of years, that there's much more resilience in banks at the moment. So I think even if there's a downturn, European banks, you may differentiate, but European banks in general and German ones also are resilient and can weather another downturn even if there is one. However, there's a big task ahead of us, and the big task is to finance transformation. And we will need, for e-mobility, for transformation in general, we will not need billions, we will need trillions. We need VC, we need public money, we need bank loans, we need capital markets. And the one thing we are a little bit concerned is that at the current moment, there's yet other burdens coming on banks. More capital buffers to raise up because regulators are concerned. But we need to balance. I mean, our job, our mandate is to finance industry, real economy, and our job is to finance transition. And somebody must enable us to finance transition because every little dime from banks will be needed to pursue with e-mobility, to pursue with infrastructure, etc. And here we are a bit concerned, so we need a level playing field and we need a full support to be able to lend and to finance.
Do you observe already an ESG bubble?
Not in financing. I mean, there's a big debate about greenwashing, and this debate, I think, is a serious one. And I think every conservatism on what to label green and what not, and how to measure and control that is more than welcome. But I don't see a bubble in, for example, green financing. I mean, we need wind parks, we need solar, we need infrastructure, and there's going to be green financings. There's a lot of technologies which are demonstrated here, and somebody needs to finance that. And that's majorly green finance.
Okay. And which role can logistics play in the ESG?
A significant one. Logistics is connecting companies, countries, and places. And we have started to invest into sustainability about 6-7 years ago. Heavily invested in automatization, and the container terminal Altenwerder in Hamburg is the first zero-emission terminal on a global level. Already now, since 3 years, and it's not greenwashing because we are certified by TÜV. I think it's the worst certification that you can get and the best because it's really proving that you have done a great job. The CTA is zero emission, and we did go one step further because we offer our customers a pure product. The product pure brings the container from the water side through the container terminal on the railway, and then we transport it further to Middle and East Europe. So we can offer a true sustainable product, which I think is the future.
Then climate change is not so a great danger for, in your opinion?
Well, climate change is for everybody, a danger, and that's the answer.
We can handle it.
We can handle it in logistics. We are trained to handle stress. And to handle as well challenges. But our answer as well, our society responsibility is to contribute to sustainable logistics. And that's the aim and the mission of HHLA in Europe to offer this.
Okay. And you said that the problem in Germany is, or in Europe, is the private consumption. Do you think that could be improved? Will people buy more in the year? Or what has to happen that they buy more?
Well, I think what we see, if you go in Munich, for example, you go somewhere shopping, I mean, you see a clear separation in between. Seems to be that some areas of consumption are flowing very well. I think the real issue is whether, in the broad sense, people will be able to consume. I think what helped is clearly the energy cap and the gas price cap. I think it was important also politically. But this is still to be shown. I think when I listen to people, they tell me that consumption is okay-ish, and there may be a pick-up. Luxury is going very well, obviously. Yeah. So I think consumption will be much better than we had in our plans, for example, in August or September. I think we see some pick-up there.
Okay, then there will be no recession, you are sure?
No, I'm not sure. But I would have told you that in October, I would have told you, I'm sure there's going to be a recession. Today, I would tell you, there's a good likelihood that we even don't see a technical recession in Germany.
Okay. And what about the stock prices? Where do you see the DAX at the end of the year?
Oh, that was a good question, which I cannot answer. Obviously, everybody is hoping for going up. I'm extremely cautious about this because I can see what the industrial production side right now in Germany, in certain areas, in particular in those who are energy consumption-wise, are really very slow. And right now, everything which is in the stock basically is carried out through not yet price increases because the order intake was taken last year. Yeah. So I think we need to be very cautious, but obviously hoping that with some clarity as well about the future of the Ukraine and other topics, we might get more stability in the economy as well.
Okay, but nobody knows about the war. When will it end? Do you think? What do you think it will last a few months?
Well, you may know that HHLL, as a European logistic group, we are operating the harbor of Odessa. Right now, the harbor itself still is closed from the border-borne side. We are operating from the hinterland, and the connectivity is done through the railways. It's very difficult to say, but we all hope, as even our own employees are in war right now, that this is ending very soon. We need to talk.
Okay. And what are the effects of the war on banking at the moment?
Well, I think there were the ultimate effects in Russia. There were a lot of companies in Russia and still are. And so I think this traffic has clearly suffered. And there's still some traffic to be done. There's a very strict regime of sanctions. Obviously, would need to be followed, but there's some humanitarian deliveries which can be done, obviously, and then there's some financial traffic. So for me, I would agree. I mean, I think we need to talk because there is, I think, in the interest of economic development, I think we need to have some light at the end of the tunnel. I think it's important. The two big wild cards are China, supply chains, in my view, and any escalation of the war. Other than that, things we can manage ourselves.
Okay, but I'm happy that in general we are more optimistic for this year. Yes. Okay, then thank you very much to my guests and to the audience. Thank you.
Thank you.